Hello, everyone, and welcome back to IL Soy Advisor. I'm Kelsey Litchfield, back with the Soy Envoys. Today I have Kelly Robertson, Craig Grafton, Karen Corrigan, Eric Beckett, and Drew Beckman, along with Stephanie Porter of the Illinois Soybean Association. So I texted you all yesterday. I said, hey, let's talk some photos. I want to see some photos. So you all sent me a photo that maybe you thought was interesting. Maybe you thought, here's a lesson learned from this growing season. I know looking back on my own photos, I thought to myself, how in the world would I pick a photo? So maybe you took some time to pick a photo. Maybe you already knew exactly which one you wanted to share, but we're just going to go around today. You'll talk about your photo, what's going on for our podcast audio listeners, maybe explain a little bit more what's going on since they can't see it. But if you are listening on the podcast, I highly recommend heading over to YouTube and watching so that you can see the photos. So, Kelly, let's go ahead and we'll start with you here. What's going on in this photo?
So this is for all of us old farts. This is a flashback to 15 years ago when we first started using fungicide on corn, and we were still using adjuvants and stickers and all that kind of stuff. And so this is corn from a cornfield, obviously, that was sprayed with a drone, and the drone operators are putting in stickers and adjuvants and all kinds of other foo-foo juice and stuff. And so we're back to seeing lots of fields, and when I say lots, I'm not exaggerating. Lots of fields where the drone applicators are, haven't lived through the past, so to speak, and so we're seeing a lot of ears like this, a lot of rosebud type ears, or ears that have maybe 4, 6 around and 8 kernels long, something like that. Totally blank ears, nothing but the cob. So we're just again, it's putting the sticker in, the adjuvants, and the timing of the fungicide application. It's just causing this to happen. So a lot of people, again, in the last 15 years haven't seen it, so don't know what it looks like.
So you have fields of this. It's not just one
Oh,
plant.
Yeah, we have, border to border fields that look like this.
And who took this photo? You said it wasn't your own photo, so you wanted to give
So
credit.
this was Scott Eversgard. This is his photo from, he's a field agronomist for Pioneer on the southwest corner of the state. And he's took this photo. I've taken this photo, a little more probably dramatic than ones I had. That's why I wanted to use it. But I mean, we're seeing this all over Southern Illinois this year.
So what would you caution to farmers who maybe want to use a drone to spray? What would you tell them based off this photo?
Well, the drone is fine. It goes back to operator error from the standpoint that I think there's a bit of proliferation of these services, which is fine. But if all the person doing that's applying is more or less reading the label, so to speak, or going off a script that somebody gave them, then they're not aware of what this is at, aware of what has happened in the past and why we don't use adjuvants or stickers or penetrants or all these other nice words for additives when we spray fungicide. That's the problem. And so we had one field that we looked at, just to illustrate how silly this is. They had used MSO as the one of their stickers, and you want to talk about a mess. And so just make sure you're communicating with whoever is doing your spraying. Please get a list of what they're putting in it before you let them spray, I guess would be my comment at this point.
And any other updates? You said bean harvest was starting down in Southern Illinois. What's it looking like?
So bean harvest has started on a lot of the mid to late twos. Yields from 40 bushel, let's say, to 80 bushel. A lot of beans have been desiccated in the last week, so that soybean harvest can be started for the guys that are going to plant canola. So uh, generally speaking, right now we would see guys gearing up to shell corn because there would be premiums at the river for early delivery. Most guys, if I made the comment earlier before we started that a lot of grain coming out of grain bins and going into bags or going on the ground so that they can get bin space to get the dryers fired up. But without the premium, nobody's really in a hurry to start corn, but we are cutting beans. And I would suspect this time next week, especially with the forecast, no rain and whatnot, there'll be several acres of beans cut, and we'll have a good idea what the early bean crop's going to look like.
Sounds good. We'll look forward to that update. Thanks, Kelly. Craig, let's go ahead and share your photo here.
Sure.
Tell us what's going on.
Yeah, so I think I've referenced this, I guess, trial in the past, but this is one of our breeding fields where we've got a planting date difference. And for those of you that I can't see it, it's an overhead picture of, a lot of different plots, and I guess the focus is there in that middle strip, and you can see on the right hand side of the photo, you can see some yellowing there, and that is a first date of a planting date trial. And then as you move straight left in that grouping, it's the same varieties just planted at a different date. And what we're seeing there is SDS show up. So you can see the rest of that field. We don't really have any pressure, but we do in that first planting date. So it's proving to me that there's more value in just maybe characterization as far as phenotype goes. We are also seeing differences in disease show up. Now, this would all been treated the same, so I'm sure growers, or I hope growers, are treating, the premium type product if they're going to go early. But this would all be treated with the same type of fungus or seed treatment. So that is one caveat there, but it's nice to show in a breeding side of things where some things fall off. So I thought it was a neat aha moment for me when I pulled up to the field. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So I wasn't quite expecting that. So I thought I'd share it. There's a few other photos I was thinking about sharing, but I'm guessing some others will have those. So this one was unique for me. So I wanted to share it here, and hopefully we can learn from this and improve products as we move forward.
Where was this located at?
That is in Stonington, Illinois, or just north of it. So central Illinois. And we had talked on the podcast previously that, SDS was popping up and showing up. So I was kind of happy to see it hit here too.
The one person who is probably happy to see it hit
Well, yeah,
their breeding field. Because, well, you'll be having a blog to talk about how you capture data from these fields. So you want to see these things because you are testing them out.
Right. And this is just a yield trial field. So we do have inoculated fields where we, purposely try to induce disease in different diseases. So we don't have that in Stonington, but those are obvious, like we should get that. But this one was more not quite rateable yet, but it's been this photo is a little bit old now. It's probably 10 days, almost 2 weeks old. So I want to go back and see what it looks like now, but
I was going to say, do you know what it looks like
happy
now?
to see that.
Okay. So you'll provide an update on how it looks next time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other updates that you have?
Not a lot. I was just saying, trying to think, we're just gearing up for some fall notes as far as the work that I will be doing. I was talking yesterday, some tar spot popping up in east of us in around Indianapolis area. So a little heavier pressure over there. I haven't seen anything to that level yet, and fingers crossed. I think most things are in good shape now. That we won't see any major devastation like we did a few years ago. So, but No, just waiting for things to dry down and start taking fall notes for us.
Yep. Thanks, Craig. Karen, let's move over to you with your photo. Let's make sure I got it here. Here we go.
So this is a picture of a field that was ponded earlier this year. And the reason I chose this photo is because we got 3 inches of rain since the last time we talked. And the Pro Farmer Tour came out with really high yields in this area for Illinois. So I just think it's important to reiterate that it's still very variable because we do have a lot of these wet spots. And just walking in from the edge of the field and grabbing some ears isn't necessarily the best overall estimate of what's really going on out there. So I didn't want people to freak out seeing the numbers so high and then be upset when they start going through the fields. And there's a lot of high yields, but there'll also be some zeros in there too in different spots. So we tend to forget what happened earlier in the season. And so this is just a reminder that I would really still expect most fields, at least in this area, to be fairly variable because we got in late due to rain. We had these ponds filled probably 5 or 6 different times. And the first few times they were that way for weeks. So, but that's why I chose this field.
Yeah. We talked about it, I think, last week or before, how we have some short memories of what's happened. And we get to this part of the season, we're like, oh, great yields. And then I think that's a good reminder. You go in and be like, maybe not so fast, or maybe it's good in some areas, not good in others, but something definitely to keep an eye out for. Karen, do you have any other updates or school started? I know that.
Yep, we did start school this week, but it's a great time to evaluate your weed control.
Yep.
And decide, is there something you can do this fall? What are the species that are out there? This area, we have a lot of organic farms, and a lot of those fields are really showing. But it also gives you an idea of what else might pop up in the area. So I think it's a great time to evaluate and adjust as necessary.
Thanks, Karen. Drew, let's go over to you.
Yeah, so this was a really fun field that I got to deal with. So I got called to a field. This would have been probably V8 corn. So it was actually fairly early in the season, and we had some winds and actually had some root lodging. And it just didn't really make sense with the planting conditions and some of those. And basically, we got there and investigated and saw just massive corn rootworm feeding. So the roots were fairly well decimated on the vast majority of the plants. There were adults flying pretty well everywhere. And I mean, this would be a 2+ on our nodal injury scale. So you can walk through, and I actually did some rootworm floats, which is where we, just basically see how many larvae float to the top. And there were 3 of them floating, and I picked the root up, and there were 2 more of them that had come out of the root and were staring at me. So, basically what I wanted to get through with this is, while I don't want to spread widespread panic about corn rootworm, because there's a lot of areas that are still in low to moderate pressure. If you are in extenuating circumstances, so for example, this field was second year corn on corn. There was a double planted there without insecticide. The first year, there was no insecticide sprayed with the fungicide application. So basically, those females were able to lay eggs unimpeded. So you see that there's a massive influx that next year. There is enough pressure coming back that we need to monitor it and kind of watch what's going on and be mindful of it if we are going into a corn on corn situation, because it's more than one field that we're seeing this in. And the tracking is that there was something done that year before, whether it was a double planted corn on corn, whether there was no insecticide sprayed, where we are seeing pressure.
And where was this located?
That was just north of Route 80.
North of Route 80. Okay.
Yeah, in the western part of the state. Yep.
Okay. Any other updates, Drew, that you have that you want to share?
Yeah, we went on our we call it our choice trial, which is our pre-commercialization trial walks here over the early part of this week, and I mean, I hate to say it, but stuff does look really good. I agree with what Karen said about remember what's going on earlier in the season, but there is a lot of very good crop out there. Looked at some 108-day corn planted around that Burlington, Iowa area that is going to get combined here before, right after Labor Day. It was about 35%. So that's some pretty early product for them down there. But yeah, overall, I mean, there is a lot of optimism out of there, a lot of kernel depth being put on right now with this cool conditions, and looking at a lot of weeds growing up too. So
Yep. Keep scouting. That's for sure. Thanks, Drew. Eric, we'll head over to you with your photo, which is not a good looking field at all.
Yeah, definitely. So for everybody that may be listening, I've got a photo of where we had sprayer contamination. And in the photo, you can see that classic V, even though there's definitely injury clear across the field, you can see different varying degrees of injury. And you can see that classic V clean out. If you've never seen that V pattern, when the sprayer cleans out, basically you start from the ends and work your way in. As that concentration gets lower throughout the spray boom as you go through the field. So a little bit about what happened was that we believe somehow or another Caprino, a corn herbicide, made its way into some bean loads and affected 3 different fields. But what's kind of odd is that there was varying degrees of this injury in 3 different fields, and in 2 of the fields there was portions of the field where soybeans were not affected at all, which is kind of odd. And we still, this day, we have not been able to figure out how maybe Caprino got into the load, but we do know that the grower previously, before going to beans, had been spraying Caprino. And and the injury symptoms were very characteristic of it. If we think about what's in Caprino, it's a group 27 and a group 2. And so we were seeing the red veining, and then we were also seeing the bleached leaves and everything from those 2 modes of action. So anyways, but so, I mean, and the grower ended up, shortly after this photo was taken, came back in, replanted. We were all a little bit nervous at that point because we didn't know with future rains if we would get reactivation and kill the beans that had been replanted. But the beans did come up. They struggled a little bit, but they seem to be doing okay today. So it'll be interesting to see once we do get to harvest, especially maybe in the other 2 fields where we did have some areas of the field that were not affected, see what the yield differences are in these fields. But it's also one of those cases that basically we own these fields, and so anything we could have done to help the grower to help mitigate risk was the course of action we took. So
yeah, definitely. I also should have prefaced this. Everyone likes to show pretty photos, and I like to show the ones where we learn something. Yeah, you have the pretty fields, the leaves and things like that, but I appreciate you all sharing a photo. It's like, okay, maybe something was screwed up here. Here's how we learned from it. And I think that's how we all move forward and get better within our own operations. So thanks, Eric. Anything else you want to add that's coming out of the fields?
Yeah, so I think the common theme has been kind of, keep evaluating fields as we go into harvest and everything. Unfortunately, I've been on kind of PTO mode here, trying to get some vacation time burned up before the end of the fiscal year before I lose it. So I haven't been out in the field a whole lot, but what I have been out in the field and driving around, I am noticing a lot of effects from this corn crop running out of nitrogen just because of the wet conditions we've had this year. So, please take that into consideration as we start making plans, fall fertility plans, even plans for next year. Like us myself being involved in a retail organization, prepay prices and everything are starting to come out now. So please start taking those considerations when we are starting to make those bookings and things for next year, that maybe we're thinking about our nitrogen plan. Maybe how do we learn from this year to make adjustments to our nitrogen plan so we get the most out of that dollar spent. And then 2, I am seeing some ear rots and stuff starting to show up. I think that's probably going to really get slowed up now that it seems like the spigot's kind of turned off. but still with, some hot, dry conditions that are maybe on the horizon, we can still get some ear rots and stuff associated with hot, dry conditions. So if growers have got any specialty markets they might be taking grain to, or even storing it on their own farm, I would still encourage some of that scouting. So if there needs to be any considerations around grain storage, those considerations to be taken, and there's no surprises.
Before I get to Stephanie, a question either from the retail side or Kelly from your side of soil fertility. What's your message to farmers that are looking at these commodity markets and then also trying to plan for fall fertility? What's your recommendations there?
Well, I guess several things. Number one, you guys are talking about cutting back and whatnot. You can't cut back if you don't know what you can or can't cut back on. So you got to have a soil test. That's the first thing. And what that soil test tells you will kind of dictate, which direction you can go. First thing, lime, fix your lime without your pH being right. Doesn't matter. Your herbicides don't work right. Nitrogen uptake's not right. So fix your lime first. And then in Southern Illinois, I can't speak for, the rest of the state, but from basically I-70 South, what we find is, and what I've been running for customers right now is there's a 60 to 70% savings on phosphate because our phosphate levels are so high from year after year after year application that we're able to cut 60 to 70% of the phosphate for next year out. So there's big savings to be had there using variable rate technology. And so, we're finding, basically 30%, 40% of fields that only need a phosphate application. The big scare to me right now is number one, phosphate is, in my opinion, and from what I'm hearing from my friends in retail and wholesale, that, phosphates are greatly or exaggerated in price, overpriced. Potash isn't too bad, bought off the river right now. Not bad at all from that standpoint. But phosphates are really high. So guys are talking about either just spreading potash this fall and not spreading phosphate, which is fine. But the big thing that worries me or concerns me is that a lot of guys that normally fall fertilize are talking about waiting till spring to see what prices do and see if prices moderate. And there's no problem with spring applied fertilizer. Absolutely no problem at all. The big problem is that if everybody waits till spring, a lot of it's not going to get on. Retail does not have the capacity to spread every acre. We don't have the trucking and infrastructure to get that amount hauled in constantly. And so, and then the tendency will be to start sometime in February or March when ground conditions are not ideal in Southern Illinois to do anything usually. And that's going to lead to more compaction and rutting. And so we really need to think this through and not only from the economic side of it, but from the implications of the logistics of getting it done.
Yeah. Anyone else want to comment on that? Good. All right. Thanks, Kelly. That was a good update. I had that on my list of questions, but I know that could be a full podcast episode within itself. So maybe we'll look into that. But let's get back to sharing photos. And definitely last but not least, I told Stephanie yesterday, I said, which photo are you going to choose? And I think she thought of one right off the bat. So Steph, tell us what you got here.
As I was in the parking lot, she forgot to mention that, leaving work. Yes.
And sent it right away.
This is my photo, and actually I can't take credit for it. This is actually given to Abigail Peterson. But we have been both traveling this week. But this is an example of photos that are coming in to us. And I guess I'm also in about an hour or so or less going to be making a field visit of another person that contacted me that they're finding red crown rot. So this is an example on the western side of the state of obviously from a plane of where they they found that something was going awry. For those that can't see the picture, it would be, just, it looks like pure, a lot of brown soybeans from above, pretty much throughout the whole field. And so Abigail visited this field. We were in Missouri earlier this week, and so on her way back, she stopped and confirmed this is red crown rot. I was able to talk to Dr. Mandy Bish also at Mizzou earlier this week. They have confirmed, and it's no surprise, red crown rot in Missouri. And one of the things that I'm running into and she's running into is it oftentimes when we look for red crown rot, it looks like SDS, which obviously SDS is very common in both Missouri and Illinois. And we look down at the crown and it's red. You might see some of that white mycelium, but those characteristic fruiting structures, they're globular, little kind of roundish fruiting structures aren't there all the time. And so a lot of people, like the person I'm going to see today, they're not sure what it is. So I'm actually going to have Dr. Steve Clough from USDA and Dr. Boris Camilletti meet me at the field today. And again, Dr. Steve Clough is collecting samples, and he's actually taking them back to his lab and diagnosing them for free for people if you're not sure. And we have more information on that at ilsoyadvisor.com. If you go to our main homepage, that's been redone thanks to Kelsey, it's at the very top of the page. If you click on it, you can get more information, and basically you email Steve and he's going to help you get some free postage so you can send some samples in if it's just not convenient for any of us to go out there. But we really do try to go out there. And the other thing I was going to mention is we're also tracking down landowners, and Eric's helped me to do that. He's helped more than he knows he has. But it's been a lot of Scooby-Doo mysteries because actually Steve and Boris have been getting tips about red crown rot throughout the state, and then we tried to track down the landowner, which is not as easy as you may think it is, especially when we have a very high absentee landownership across the state. So it's been very interesting, but this is kind of a repeat of my last year of where it's red crown rot is now becoming very visual at this point in time. The other thing that Dr. Mandy Bish made a comment and was very true, that it seems that compared to SDS, red crown rot just starts going downhill really fast. The plant just starts desiccating really quickly. And so I think that's another kind of red flag. Obviously, this field is doing that where the plant's just given up the ghost, and as we go later and later into the season, it's going to be even more difficult maybe to diagnose red crown rot.
So now's the time to get out and look. Thanks, Stephanie. Anything else you're seeing from the fields or from your travels this week?
Yeah, I guess I did get an update from Dr. Bond in SIU, and I know I mentioned this to Kelly, and it's been going on for a while now, but really high amount of disease, soybean disease down there he's finding. Just wrote a blog about that. Kelsey just posted it yesterday. So update from Dr. Bond, seeing really, really heavy frog eye leaf spot kind of later in the season, and also seeing SDS. So, Craig? Yeah.
This growing season isn't finished. Just when you think you can throw your hands up or take a rest. But sometimes I'm glad to hear, Eric, you're taking some PTO, so you got to take a rest at one point. That's for sure. Well, thanks all. We're up on our half hour. I appreciate you sharing those photos today. Definitely keep us posted on how that goes, especially some of these fields that we're seeing some late season disease on. Be interesting to see how an update, and then ultimately how it yields this come fall. One programming note, we won't be meeting next week. Our team is going to be down in Belleville at the 100 Years of Horsepower show. If you're attending, stop by and say hi. We're going to have a booth there. My family's going to bring some Ford tractors and enjoy the show. So we won't be meeting next week, but probably meet the week after, and then we'll talk harvest and all the other late season things that are happening. So thanks all. We'll talk to you soon.